Hello, everyone. My name is Scott Kober, co-producer of CMEpalooza, and I would like to welcome you to the anchor session of CMEpalooza Fall. This session is entitled Fade Out HIV, Connecting Black Barbers, Their Clients, and Community Clinicians. This session is sponsored by Platform Q. Our moderator for this session is Dean Beals. Dean is the president and CEO of DKB Med. If this session sounds familiar, if some of these people look familiar, it's because this was one of our planned sessions for the spring until a hurricane kind of interrupted our plans down in Florida. So we pushed this back and rescheduled it to the fall. So I want to thank our full panel before we even start here for coming back and being able to present this again here at our fall meeting. So as with all of our sessions, I would first like to thank the sponsors of CMEpalooza Fall, our gold sponsors, the Academy for Continued Healthcare Learning, Clinical Education Alliance, and Med Learning Group. Our silver sponsors, Academic CME, DKB Med, Haymarket Medical Education, Helio CME, Integrity CE, Medscape Education, Platform Q Health Education, Red Med Ed, and Talem Health. And our bronze sponsors, Answers in CME, Antidote Education Company, Bonum Continuing Education, CME Institute, CMEology, Hippocrates, Excalibur Medical Education, Global Education Group, Infograph Ed, Integritas Communications, Iridium Communications, MedIQ, Iridium Continuing Education, MedIQ, Partners for Advancing Clinical Education, PriMed, Peerview Institute for Medical Education, RMEI Medical Education, Vindico Medical Education, and Wright Medicine. So 2 ways to ask questions during this and all of our live CMEpalooza sessions. You can use the CMEpalooza text line, 267-6660-CME0263. Or if you open up the viewing window in YouTube by clicking on Watch on YouTube on the lower left-hand corner of the live page, you can enter in questions within the YouTube chat function. So certainly feel free to submit questions and we will answer them as we go along. So we will be incorporating a series of audience response questions via the CME Outfitters ARS system, which is Poll Everywhere. You can either download the Poll Everywhere app if you haven't already done so, join the presentation entitled CMEpalooza 005, or type in this URL in your web browser, www.pollev.com/CMEpalooza005. We've got 4 questions that we'll kind of run through early in the presentation if you want to get ready for that. Finally, our speaker disclosure slide. Please note that the opinions, discussions, and/or conclusions expressed are those of our panelists and do not represent an endorsement by or position of their employer, its parent company, or their affiliates. And with that, I am going to turn things over to Dean to get us started.
Great. Thank you so much, Scott. And thank you, everybody, for joining us today at the very last presentation of the day. We'll try not to take up the full hour so that you can get out of here a little bit early and get back to your lives. But I want to thank you all for joining us today. All right, let me introduce today's presenters. I'm Dean Beals, the president and CEO of DKB Med. I'm joined by my colleagues Tabitha and Stan. And then also joining us today are Priya from Gilead and Tyreek Jackson, who is the founder of the Premier Barber Institute. And we have one other guest today. You may recall, for those of you that were here last time, we had it wasn't actually a hurricane, it was a tornado. And we were down in Florida and we thought, you probably didn't want to watch us do this presentation from our bathroom. So we opted to push this off to the fall. So thank you all for coming back. And now I'm going to turn it over to Stan, who's going to give you a little overview, and then we're going to ask a few ARS questions. So Stan?
Thanks, Dean. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you being here and this opportunity to talk about this. So why did we do this? We did this because there's a gap in diagnosis amongst Black individuals. Black individuals comprise about 13% of the US population. However, they represent 42% of new HIV diagnoses. Black men also represent 31% of the new diagnoses, and Black individuals are more likely, 8 times more likely than white individuals, to be diagnosed with HIV. The also thing is here is there's medical mistrust in this community. And we wanted to create an alliance with Fade Out to bridge that gap, to bring in a trusted advisor or person and bridge it with the community. So our goal was to establish establish an alliance between healthcare providers and the barbershops. Why barbers? Barbers have been long recognized as effective venues for delivering healthcare interventions. We saw this in a hypertension initiative a few years ago, and we thought it would be a great place to try to address this gap. But why barbers? They have a long-standing and trusted relationship with their clients, so it was really important to bring them in to do this. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Priya to talk about why.
Actually, me. I'm going to do a few polling questions first, and then we're going to turn it over. All right. So with that overview, we wanted to ask a couple of questions. First one doesn't really have anything to do with that, but tell us who you are. Are you a supporter? Are you a medical education company? Or are you someone else lurking out there in the world of CME? So, All right, come on. I'm hoping for at least one supporter other than Priya. Someone else. Okay. All right. Oh, there we go. See, I knew we would get it. All right, so it's sort of settling down now. It looks like mostly medical education companies and someone else with a little smattering of supporters. Okay, terrific. So when we're ready, we can go to the next slide or the next survey question. So based on what Stan has told you, have you ever supported or created a program like this that included patients, providers, and a broader screening within a specific community? So in our case, it was Black individuals within barbershops, but you may have done something different on your own. So looks like most of you haven't, but a number of you have, in the 33% range or thereabouts, so about a third of you. Okay, terrific. Moving on to the next question. For those of you that did this, so just those of you that did, that 60% or 70%, what was the number one reason you created this sort of program? Is it because it was aligned with your objectives? We wanted to engage multiple groups, DEI as a priority for our organization, or some other reason? Okay, so it looks like evenly split between engaging groups, priority for your organization, and some, oh, maybe not. Things change. Look at that. So aligned with our objectives, identified need. Okay, terrific. Thank you. And I think there's one other question, if I'm not mistaken. What do you think is the number one reason that you would not support? So if you have not supported, for those of you that said no, a program or create a program like this. One, it's too difficult to develop. Two, we do not support or create education aimed at patients. Three, we do not have the bandwidth to do this kind of program. Or for something else. All right. Yes, you'll hear about the difficulties of doing this for sure, and the bandwidth to do such a program. All right, terrific, interesting. Thank you all very much. I'm going to turn it over to Priya now, who's going to tell us why Gilead decided to support this program. So go ahead, Priya.
Thanks so much, Dean. Really excited to be here and share why this initiative was so special and so important to Gilead. So as Stan mentioned, barbershops have long been recognized as an effective venue for delivering healthcare interventions. Barbershops can actually attract Black men of all ages and serve as a venue for discussions about local events, politics, news, sports, and other topics, including health. Because barbers often meet with their clients at regular intervals, it allows barbers to build a trusted relationship with their clients. This is one of the reasons that it also makes barbers prime candidates to initiate conversations about HIV screening, risks, as well as treatment, and allows them to do so in a manner in which they can meet patients and communities where they are. Another reason that we love this program is that it targets a non-traditional setting, such as barbershops, in order to reduce healthcare disparities and gaps in the HIV care continuum. HIV testing can be done in a variety of non-clinical as well as community-based settings and community outreach sites and events. Non-clinical settings can be easy to access and useful for those who might not be willing or able to access healthcare or medical services regularly. Offering HIV testing in these settings is an innovative and effective way to bring HIV testing directly to the community. This remains particularly important for those in the Black and Brown communities who have had fewer opportunities for conversations about preventative care as well as HIV testing. Another unique aspect about this program is that it engages and brings together local clinicians, barbers, as well as influencers. Despite traditional public health efforts to engage and communicate with the community and encourage testing, this trajectory has actually often been slow. And the uptake has been particularly low in communities who may often benefit the most. This in turn has led to the recognition that the expansion and engagement to additional and novel partners in the community are required to improve outcomes along the care continuum. And the last item that I wanted to highlight in regards to this program is that it is sustainable and able to continue even after the DKB Med fade out HIV intervention is complete. This is through the community partnerships as well as through the Barber and Clinician Referral Network. The referral network is a list of that's provided directly to the barbers of clinicians in their area who have completed the clinician training and are best able to meet their clients' HIV care needs. This program is also scalable and transferable to other cities and geographic areas. And I know that the DKB Med team and Fade Out HIV team can attest that they have received a number of requests and inquiries to bring this education to other cities in the US. So with that, I will turn it back over to Stan.
Thank you, Priya. Priya, I remembered when we first started and proposed this idea, there was a little bit of reluctance. Can you discuss about that or the hesitance?
Yeah, Stan, great question. I think the first time that this initiative was brought to Gilead, there was a lot of curiosity and I guess you could say hesitancy about whether barbers would actually be willing to talk to their clients about HIV as well as sexual health. And also, have there been other programs or interventions that have been similar to this and that have been successful? So I know the DKB Med team did a great job of even conducting a survey to showcase how willing barbers would be to address sexual health and HIV discussions with their clients. And also sharing with us other interventions similar to this that have been done and how successful they were.
Thanks, Priya. So how did we approach this? Okay, we did it multifaceted. There was clinician education, barber education, patient education. And because Dean and I are not the right face for this, we needed someone to be able to talk to barbers. So we brought in a social media influencer who was a barber. And then we also engaged local expert faculty in the area that we would be doing these interventions. But the most important thing, how we approached it, was the knowledge that we may have to pivot. Originally, the idea started out with we were going to look for partners at the New York BarberCon. BarberCon is an association similar to like the ACCME for barbers, where they get to go and learn the latest in techniques and health and whatnot as it affects their patients. We had access to the main stage where we conducted and introduced the program. We had a booth there to register possible people who were interested in participating in this. And then we had a private breakout room where we could educate them more deeply than on the main stage as to how to talk to your patients, the benefits of it, and the need for this in the community. And from those barbers, we were then going to look at the neighborhoods that they were in, and then we were going to decide where to do it based on the neighborhoods where they were located. And then we were going to recruit clinicians in those neighborhoods to take the education so that they could be the people being referred to by the barbers. Then we educated the barbers and the clinicians again. We took our team, and our team was going to go out there and individually go over the questions the barbers would have and explain how the program would work. We educated the clinicians via a Zoom call and had 2 different faculty in New York lined up to help educate them. We also created a resource that linked barbers and clinicians together so that the barber had access to lists of clinicians with different with different ability to accept different insurance depending on the client's needs, so they could link them to the appropriate place. And then the barbers would refer the clients to the local clinician, and the client would receive a coupon for a free haircut if they went to go get screened. However, that's how we planned it, but I mentioned the ability to pivot. So next slide. We developed it for New York, but because COVID restriction, BarberCon was canceled. We still had already done the clinician education in the community, and this reached out to a clinician who happened to be out in California, and he wanted to know if we could do this initiative in Los Angeles. So we went back to Gilead. We got a change of scope. We changed up our faculty. We still partnered with our social media expert. And then since we weren't on the ground, because we're based in New York, we planned on doing a lot of the legwork ourselves. We got involved with a community organizer to help us assist on the ground in Los Angeles. So there we pivoted from New York to LA. I think I'm going to turn it over to Tabitha.
Thank you, Stan. As Stan mentioned, we did have to do a pivot, which seems to be one of the key themes throughout this project was pivoting. A lot of neck turning, let me tell you. So let me just give a brief little overview. You see our original East Coast faculty was Dr. Oni Blackstock and Justin Alves. As Stan said, we actually did have a live presentation with our New York staff, but we had to pivot and move the focus to LA. And there we worked with Dr. William King. And Dr. William King is the clinician that Stan is referring to that reached out to us and asked, could we bring the program to LA? So it was perfect timing. We also worked with a community advocate in LA, Tony Wofford, and that was our team that we were looking for. So we had to shift with that. Next slide. So as Stan mentioned, we educated, and there was the setup to link our clinicians with care. So as he said, we had live and enduring webcasts. We were able to reach over 297 participants across the country. The goal was to have clinicians that serve Black and brown patients, the Black and the Latino community, and to educate them on the concerns, risk of HIV, and how to talk to that community of patients. And with those clinicians, at the end of each session, we offered the opportunity for those educated clinicians to participate in our network. So what that network was is we developed a network of over 20 clinics where, when we worked with the barbers that we identified also, these barbers could refer their clients to go to these clinics to receive HIV testing. Even though we know testing is at more than just these 20 plus clinics, this is who we had identified who had been educated by us during our sessions on how best to approach this population. At these clinics, we had gatekeepers who were in charge of a QR code, as you can see on your screen. However, they may have set it up if it was visible or hidden or whatever. And if a client went to the clinic in the network and got screened for HIV, they were then receive the opportunity to scan that QR code and receive a coupon to go back to the barber that had referred them and get a free haircut. So that was the initial plan, and that's how we set up our patient linkage to care. Next slide, please. And as Stan mentioned, in addition to the faculty, we linked up with a barber influencer, Tyreek Jackson. Tyreek has a very large following. And I'll be honest, I did not know the impact of a barber influencer. I didn't even know a barber influencer existed until this program. But let me say that the knowledge that Tyreek brought to the program, and we realized how essential Tyreek was, is because simply, as Dean mentioned, we don't speak barber. It's just simple as that. We speak CME, but we were able to reach the barbers a lot more efficiently with the use of Tyreek. And I'm going to turn it over to Tyreek to introduce himself.
So, yes, I do speak Barber, but I also speak HIV. After losing my father as a teenager to HIV and AIDS, I participated in other different initiatives to help bring awareness to HIV in my community locally in Lancaster, PA. And so, once I lost him in 1995, I had to figure out ways that I can continue to contribute to not just his legacy, but empowering our people in our community through cut-a-thons and different various organizations that were helping to bring awareness and even help to families suffering and dealing with HIV. I've been a barber for over 30 years, a school owner for the last 10 years, been working with barbers and barber students, and a shop owner for over 20 years. So my knowledge in the barbering industry, as well as some community involvement, has gone on for a very, very long time. And I knew that if I was able to connect with the barbers, that we can really push this initiative and create the education that we needed to bridge the gap between community and barbers.
So Tariq, let me ask you a question. I don't remember who contacted you initially. It was not I, but it was someone from our company. And you got this, DM probably through Instagram. And what did you think? Did you even know such a thing existed? And what did you think?
So the first call I got was from BarberCon. It was from Lee from BarberCon. He had contacted me and said, "Hey, I want you to work with this company. I think that you'd be a great influence to help them push this initiative." And he said it was hypertension. And I was like, I'm not sure if I want to get involved. I don't know much about it. And I just don't want to be a part of something that I don't have any, real heart or passion in. And then I reached out to Tabitha, and Tabitha called me back, and we had a good conversation. I said, I appreciate it, but hypertension. She was like, hypertension? No, this is about HIV. And I was like, oh, well, tell me more. And then I was able to just kind of share my personal story about my father and some of the other initiatives that I did. And she says, I think this is going to be a perfect fit. And that's really, really what really captivated me and why I decided to stay involved.
Perfect. We've so enjoyed working with you on this. And for those of you, in the audience that don't know this, we've worked with Tyreek on a couple of other initiatives as well within the barber community. What is the one thing that you learned during your time working on this program that surprised you? Anything?
Yeah, there were a few things that surprised me, especially when we were out in LA and talking about HIV. There was a woman, she was in her 30s, and she had stopped me, and she said, "Is HIV really a thing?" And it kind of threw me off, right? And what I realized was when I was growing up with my father dying of HIV, in the 90s, people were dying of HIV. They were dying of AIDS because of HIV. And what we hear now are people are living with HIV. And so I think that was the paradigm shift for me, because people in their 30s that don't think that HIV still exists, it's because they're not hearing stories of people dying. We heard stories. I had my father, friends at school, my uncle. There were different people who were passing away from HIV, even celebrities that were passing away, from music artists like from Queen and Ice, just the different celebrities that were dying because of HIV. We heard that growing up. And then as I got older, you didn't hear too much about people dying. And so I think that was what really, really caught my attention, when a 30-year-old woman was unsure about HIV and didn't even know that it still existed.
Thanks. Yeah, I remember you relating that story to us. It wasn't in her world. And actually, that's a good thing. But what she didn't know is what was going on in the world beyond the people.
But I think it spoke of the lack of education in our community about HIV. Most people didn't know how to find the proper education and the right care, and it was really what spoke to my heart when I heard that, because there was just no real information about it.
Great, thank you, Tyreek. Let me turn it back over to Tabitha. Tabitha talked about head turning a couple of times and pivoting, and this is some of the examples of that. So Tabitha.
Sure. Okay. So the best way to describe this is life was lifing. Life happens, and it happened a lot throughout this program. So as we have briefly touched on, our expectation was that we would be working out of New York City. And of course, COVID, it affected so many people, and it affected this program. The initial step that we were going to do is we were going to go to New York BarberCon and kick all of this off. But because of COVID, it was canceled. And the solution was we switched to Los Angeles. And as I mentioned previously, we hired the Los Angeles Community Outreach Partner. And another expectation we had was that the community outreach partner that we connected with would recruit barbers and help educate about HIV risk treatment and prevention. Um, Unfortunately, they did not meet our expectations for that or what we had set out with providing that ongoing outreach. And they were a little reluctant to expand the network as we saw that would best serve the program. And what we came up with, and Tyreek was very essential in this, is that we just kind of moved it to more of a grassroots effort that not just making it a technical education. We took it on the ground and went out to the barbershop. So Tyreek and we had another team member working with him actually went to the barbershops and was doing in-person on-site education. So they're talking to the barbers about the importance of HIV education, talking to them about how to speak to their clients and getting the involvement there. Recruiting barbers also, because we also had a barber network that we were trying to create as well, as with barbers committing saying, I am going to participate in this program, I am going to educate my clients on the importance of HIV screening. Also, we engaged the barbers through, in addition to going on site out to Los Angeles and visiting the barbershops, we also did a Zoom call. We had some Zoom calls. We did a nice video that was available online with Tyreek educating barbers on what to say and how to speak with their clients. And we were also very fortunate that because Tyreek is an amazing popular influencer, Tyreek has a live program, a weekly live program that he does on Instagram. And we were very fortunate that Tyreek invited us multiple times to his live broadcast and worked in the conversation of HIV with what he educates barbers on. I know it seems like how in the world can you tie in uh talking about being an effective barber with HIV, but hey, Tyreek can do it. And so we were very pleased with that. He invited myself along with faculty to participate in there. So we were getting the education out. Another expectation that we had was that even though we did all this and we made all these efforts, sometimes it just doesn't work out the way you want it to. And we were training the barbers. We thought we were getting it together with having the barbers know what to say. But what we didn't take into account is that barbers just get busy and they're just not thinking. Their job is to maintain hair. They're not necessarily, their job is to maintain your HIV testing and your status. And so that's something that we didn't factor. And so barbers were unfortunately inconsistent. So that plan that we have of a barber educating their client, informing them where to go get tested, and then the client going to that clinic and getting a coupon was not working how we wanted it to. So our solution, and this worked out pretty well. Again, somebody heard about us and heard about what we were doing and reached out to us and said, "Hey, it'd be great if you could come out to these community events that we're having." And so we kind of switched up our plan and we had on-site testing with barbers. So barbers in our network were now on site giving haircuts, and with the premise being that you get tested, screen for HIV right there on the spot. And if you did so, you can move on to the barber and get your hair cut. And so it was free HIV rapid testing, and the barbers still engage with the clients and talk to them. And we found that that was a much higher success rate to just have it all on site, kind of eliminating the back and forth and having to travel to, this clinic or whatever. And maybe it reduced some of the stigma because everything before anybody had time to think of like, I don't want to go get the test. Too late. You're already there and you got the haircut, and it all worked out well. So that was one of the, I think, a key thing that helped us see the success was making that solution.
Yeah, thank you, Tabitha. I think it's interesting. I think that we were fearful of having the HIV testing at the barbershops originally. We really felt that there would be a lot of stigma around that. But what we came to recognize is it was okay. People were okay with doing it as long as you approached it in the right way and you approached it in a way that was comfortable and came from someone who they trusted. And I think Tyreek can speak to the fact that this relationship that clients have with their barbers is really pretty unique. Tyreek, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I mean, barbers are there for many of your clients' most memorable moments: weddings, quinceañeras, funerals, birthdays, all the major moments in your life. You go to your barber to get service so that you look good for those moments. And when you're establishing those relationships with those clients, they begin to trust you in more ways than you could imagine. They tell you when they're depressed or when they're dealing with so many different things. And this is a great opportunity for a barber who is educated in the area of HIV, is just to encourage them if they're talking to a client who has maybe some behavior that might be a little bit promiscuous, or just engaging in some things that maybe they would have some concern. Great way for a barber to just kind of introduce the conversation and get that ball rolling so they can at least know their status. And that is the first step.
Great. Thank you, Tarek. Actually, we have one question before we move on that I'm going to throw to you, Priya. It says, when things were changing with the program, how much did you need to communicate with the funder about these changes? Were they ever reluctant to approve the shifts?
I think that's a great question. I think the DKB Med team did a great job of communicating all of the changes throughout the program, both through the change of scope and making sure we understood exactly what was being encompassed in the change of scope, clearly outlining all of the details. We know that in COVID, there were a lot of changes that were happening due to all of the programs. We felt very comfortable in reviewing the change of scope and understanding all of the changes through our communications with the DKB Med team. So no hesitancies from our end on the changes that were being outlined. I think the DKB Med team very clearly outlined exactly why things were changing, why the initial approach was not the most optimal, why they were pivoting, and what their recommendation was. So I think they did a great job in communicating all of those changes, which ultimately led to no hesitancies from the review team.
Great, thanks, Priya. So let me turn it back up to over to Stan to give us a little some select outcomes from the program.
Thanks, Dean. Of course, we had our traditional educational knowledge gains. We saw a 33% increase of knowledge overall. What was heartening was that we saw 104% knowledge increase around rapid start, which is important. If they're screening people, they really need to understand rapid start. And then we also saw that the confidence improved. We reached, in addition to main stage, 682 participants. This included 385 barbers and 297 clinicians. We registered 38 barbers for this program, and we had 21 testing sites in the Los Angeles area for participants to go to. And our ultimate success was that we actually conducted 308 HIV tests in this program.
Great, thank you, Stan. So just a couple of sort of key takeaways, and of course, any other questions that folks have, and I have a couple of questions for our panelists. But planning is important, but pivoting is even more important, particularly when you're doing programs like this. This is not clearly the standard webcast. This is not the standard symposia, and there are lots of things that change. You're dealing with everyone from barber influencers to healthcare systems to doctors who you need to get to join part of the program, to barbers. And as Tyreek pointed out, they're sometimes consistent, sometimes inconsistent ability. We thought, hey, we'll go educate them once and they'll understand and they'll share this information with every client. Not true. We needed to keep going back, and Tyreek was great at going back and reminding people through a combination of live as well as online programs to reinforce the message over and over again and remind people of how important this is. Local insights, super important. As Tabitha pointed out, we worked with folks on the ground who knew the area. Tyreek, not as familiar with Los Angeles, although we certainly did have connections out there. But the fact that we worked with a local clinician and we worked with a local community partner really helped. Again, working with those community partners wherever you can to make sure as you do these localized kinds of events that they are successful. Communication across everyone. So as Priya pointed out, when we had an issue, when we had a problem, rather than hiding behind it, which those of us that are in this industry sometimes do because we feel like, oh, we can fix it. We don't need to let anybody know we can fix it. We did. We went out there and we said, listen, Priya, here's the problem. Here's where we're having some challenges, and making sure that that those challenges were addressed and coming up with a solution. I can't overstate the value of having Tyreek as an amazing partner on this program. He was just, superb and continues to be. As I said, a very engaged supporter, and then really, a team-based approach. So not just looking at it as one versus the other, but influencer, community, clinicians, barbers, everybody to be part of this program. So I do have one more question I wanted to see here. With what you learned and struggled through in this program, what would you do differently if you were able to replicate it in the future? Priya, don't listen at the moment. I'm going to ask Tabitha that question. Tabitha, what would you do differently next time around?
What I would do differently next time around, definitely Tyreek would be in on the early stages of the planning. Tyreek provided way more insight than we ever knew that was coming. I mean, we were expecting his popularity, his influence, but the insight he gave with speaking to barbers, with just giving the perspective of a family member who was affected by someone who had HIV, that was really good. And Tyreek brought a lot of insight into the way we pivoted. So definitely Tyreek would be in on the early planning stages and not just with the DKB Med team. Also, when we ended up pivoting, I would have everything right there on site. We put too many, sometimes when you make it too difficult to get to the goal, it just kind of you start losing people. So in the future, bam, let's have it all there. I think we underestimated people, they're comfortable, that comfortable feeling, not taking into thought that if everybody's in the same setting, doing the same testing, they're probably feeling pretty comfortable with doing it because they're not feeling called out about it. That community aspect. So I would probably eliminate the steps needed to get to the goal that we're looking for.
Great. Stan, any insights, any thoughts that you have about moving forward?
No, I agree with what Tabitha said, but I would also, when she said have it all there, I would have a clinician with them, some sort of clinician to talk. And when we're doing another initiative now, we had Tyreek and a clinician in there, and the clinician was able to talk to the patient while they were being screened, and talk to them about lifestyle, talk to them about medications, and talk to them about alternatives before they got their tests. And this is in diabetes, but I think it's really important to have that care right there with them when we do the program.
Yeah, Tyreek, this is another program that we're doing at the moment in diabetes. How did you feel about the value of having that clinician there at the barbershop? What was your experience with that?
I think it was amazing having a clinician right there on the spot, because they were able to help in guiding the conversation. And I think it also made them at ease. And what I realized is that the more people that were there engaging in conversation, the people who were listening on the sideline and just kind of poking their ear in the conversation, it made it easier for them to get involved in the process. So some people who may have been reluctant with either taking a test or unfamiliar with the process, as they're listening to the conversation going, it made it so much easier to get the other people involved. Barbers were doing it. And I know it was the diabetes versus HIV. HIV is a little bit, harder to a conversation to have, but having it all in one place and having a clinician there to make it a little bit easier. I totally believe that was a good shift in what we did with that second initiative.
Great. Priya, I'll give you the last word. I don't have any other comments, and we're going to let people get out of here a little bit early on a what's today? Wednesday afternoon. Any final comments that you'd like to make?
Sure. So I think for my supporter friends on the line, I think what I would say is, just don't be afraid to pilot initiatives such as these. This was the first time that Gilead piloted an initiative that really engaged barbers, the community, clinicians. So I would just encourage, continue to bring, continue to be open to the innovation that the medical education providers bring. And I think to our med ed partners, I would encourage them, continue to bring the innovation. And sometimes it doesn't always pan out the first time a program is pitched to a supporter, but don't let that discourage you from continuing to bring the innovation to other additional ideas. So we love to see them. So I think with that, that's all I have, Dean.
All right. Terrific. I think we are done, Scott. Thank you so very much, everyone. We really appreciate the opportunity to present this program to you. For those of you that are interested, we do have a lot more data on this. We just shared just a smidgen of the outcomes. We recently presented this program at the International AIDS Conference. There's a poster on this that we can share with everyone. I didn't put a QR code in here, but Scott, perhaps you can get that out to folks who might be interested.
Yeah, if you want to share with me, we can put it up on the agenda page, Dean, for sure.
Great, thank you.
All right. So just a few kind of quick housekeeping slides. One more reminder for people who want some free money. The CMEpalooza scavenger hunt is going on today. Just go to the website of this special promotion sponsor, which is Skin, Bones, Hearts, and Private Parts. Their URL is www.skinbonescme.com. And look for the CME logo, click on it, and see what happens. I will not give away the mystery. There is a survey, a very brief survey that we use to help plan for future iterations of CMEpalooza. It is only a few questions, so we would appreciate if people could go out and complete that survey. So with that, I am going to bring Derek very briefly back up on screen. So thank you to everybody for watching. We hit, I think, going into this session, we had about 1,100 people who had joined us for at least one session today. So once again, we broke our all-time record for attendance. Certainly we will be back again in 2024. Derek, any final words from you?
You owe me $1 for every unique participant that we had. So waiting for that.
All right. Well, with that, I will have the last word. So go Phils. As you see, here's Derek. He's last night after he hit one of his many home runs.
Yeah.
So thank you to everyone for joining us. Thank you to everyone on this session, to Dean and Tyreek and Stan and Tabitha and Priya and everybody who joined us on the faculty today and who watched one of our sessions. So thank you, and we will see you in 2024.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.